Who's to blame? Who's to blame?
Want to watch football without the restrictions of blackouts or cable? Check out expressvpn.com to help you get access to all the live games. Sign up today using the link in the description to get 3 free months. Kia ora, Bowl fam, it's the director. Chargers fans, I know last week's game did not go as planned, okay? A lot of us down in the dumps were trying to get excited about our matchup with the Tennessee Titans. You know what? Suck it up! It's Chargers football yet again coming up on Sunday. Chargers taking on the Tennessee Titans. We got football in front of us, baby! And you know what? In this matchup, I do think the Chargers are going to put on a show, man. I think there's going to be fireworks this week that Chargers fans get really, really excited about in terms of what this offense can do in adaptability. Do I have as much hope for the defense? I don't know that yet, but the offense should be very exciting to watch, and I think Chargers fans have a lot of reasons to tune in on Sunday, have a good time with it. We're going to go ahead and dissect this game in terms of what to expect in this one, the matchups, and yes, some of the injury report, probably the first one of the season where we're like, okay, we're going to have to, move some stuff around in terms of personnel and how this team is going to respond with that. So before we do get started, guys, shout out to the sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. Okay, let's actually go ahead and take a look at this one right here. Use code director, match your first deposit up to $100. Same thing as always, right? But I think the biggest thing I've been excited about this season that they've been doing a little bit different has been these specials, okay? I'm a big pick'em guy, all right, when it comes to daily fantasy. I think pick'ems are one of my favorite things to participate in during the season. And they got this awesome deal thing going on lately where you kind of go over to this Underdog Pick'em, Twitter or X page and just kind of pay attention for what they're throwing down in there. And right now they're doing this thing called 100K Sundays where you pick a player that they announce out here, and whether or not they hit or not, they're going to pick 10 winners for $10,000 each or something like that. Something pretty exciting every single week. So if you guys want to get in on that, definitely use code director, match your first deposit up to $100. Get in on the pick'ems, get in on the action. Definitely the best fantasy platform on the web. And with that, let's jump into this one. Before we do, hit us up with a like and sub. If you do enjoy this Chargers content, small amount of time you guys take to hit the like, sub, and bell notification helps me out a lot. Let's get into it. Lights, camera, action. Your Chargers at Titans Week 2 game preview. Last week, guys, I got to tell you real quick, too, before we jump into this game. I know it was a tough game to bounce back from. The Chargers kind of found themselves in the same narrative as we have in years previous, losing to 2 points. Close game, should have won it. Coulda, woulda. I think it's definitely not too late to change our stars. And I think in terms of what the Chargers are going to bring in terms of the versus the Tennessee Titans, we have a chance to let them begin the redemption tour with this game, okay? A lot of people, kind of wishy-washy what the Chargers could do. I think a lot of good stuff was laid in terms of foundation for 2023 that we're going to dissect a little bit in this game. Before we do, though, we got to jump into a little bit of the good news, bad news kind of situation. We got the Chargers injury report. This one does carry some significance for both sides, okay? Not just the Chargers, but as well as the Tennessee Titans. There's going to be some maneuverability required from both teams. Okay, let's start off with the Chargers. Joey Bosa found himself on the injury report with a hamstring injury. This is a big yikes, man. I'm so hoping that we don't see too much of this throughout the season in terms of our duo with Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa. Some people say that Khalil Mack's already washed after one game. Joey Bosa probably had the worst game I've seen in his career. Really rocky start for the duo. But even that being said, I don't want to see this up and down season in terms of health. I want to see this duo go out there and prove that they still have it, especially, as a duo, as overwhelming force from both sides. I want to see this come to fruition. I've waited 2 seasons for this, combo to work out, and I think it still will. And I do think that a lot of what we saw last week was as, a result of maybe poor planning or poor scheme or whatever, but I feel like Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, they still have a lot to offer, and we're going to start seeing it soon. Maybe not this week with Joey Bosa on the injury report, but soon thereafter. We also have Austin Eckler, probably the biggest one that I've been hearing a lot of news about in terms of Chargers injuries. He is doubtful to suit up on Sunday, as well as the rest of these guys on this list, which is going to cause maybe waves in terms of what the Chargers need to do with personnel. Dan Henley is doubtful. Eric Kendricks is doubtful. Probably 2 of our best linebackers not going to be available on Sunday. And then Chris Rumpf, a backup edge rusher, which if Joey Bosa doesn't suit up, who's suiting up behind him? I think we're going to see a lot of Khalil Mack and maybe Tuli Tuipulotu, but we'll cross that bridge here in a minute. We have a whole segment kind of revolving around that. Then on the Tennessee Titans side of things, there is some interesting news here in terms of what the Chargers are going to be doing in terms of their passing attack. Okay, the first things we want to point out here is that Treylon Burks is going to be practicing in full. I do think he's going to be suiting up on Sunday, and I think he's going to be their number one wide receiver, as DeAndre Hopkins is questionable. I don't know if he's going to be suiting up this week. He could, which would definitely, change what the Chargers have to do defensively, but in the end, I do think that the Chargers, in terms of matchups and what they're facing in terms of the Tennessee Titans wide receiver room, I think they look pretty good, whether or not DeAndre Hopkins suits up. He is a very big difference maker, but that's something to keep an eye on. When it comes to the defensive backs, however, of the Tennessee Titans, I think we're going to see a little bit of a shakeup out here. We see Amani Hooker out with a concussion. We see Christian Fulton out with a hamstring injury. That is pretty significant considering what they allowed last week versus Derek Carr. We'll talk more about that in just a second, but those are some of the injuries you guys have to keep an eye out for, and something that the Chargers fans, I think in terms of if the Chargers can maneuver around these a little bit, I think it does give the Bolts a bit of an edge. So let's go ahead and start with our first segment of the week called the Kellen Moore Tour. Okay, the continuation of the Kellen Moore Tour. Now, if there was one good thing to take from the Chargers Week 1 matchup versus the Miami Dolphins, it's that the offense was just absolutely spectacular. Sure, I wish that the Chargers found a way to drive, in that 2-minute offense for, the field goal to win the game. That didn't end up happening. But at the same time, you can't discredit an offense that put up 34 points in week 1 under a new OC, with pretty much a new style in offense, right? Like, I feel like the Chargers being a passing team for so long, then shifting gears and going to a more predominantly run team, that's pretty awesome. Now we get to see what the maneuverability from a Kellen Moore looks like from opponent to opponent, right? I feel like you're taking a look at week 1 matchup versus the Miami Dolphins. They're obviously a Vic Fangio-led defense. I don't know if we pushed that narrative enough last week, but Vic Fangio, the guy with the plan in Miami, the mentor to our man Brandon Staley, was the one that we were going up against. And if the Chargers fans know one thing, it's how to attack this defense. Chargers defense for a long time, under Brandon Staley now, has been pretty decent at taking away those big plays. We weren't last Sunday, but very vulnerable to the run. Feels like Kellen Moore understood this as well. He put together a fantastic rushing attack. Chargers put up over 200 on the ground. It was a great day for the offense. Defense is a different story. Now what is Kellen Moore going to look like coming into Tennessee, where they are much better at defending the run, right? But maybe a bunch weaker versus the pass. I think we're going to see a bit of a shift. Knowing Kellen Moore and his maneuverability and his flexibility, which is much better than Joe Lombardi last season, I think the Kellen Moore tour is going to continue, and we're going to continue seeing awesome numbers from the offense, even points by the offense. But more importantly, I love to see the flexibility from these coordinators and the leaders of this team via coaching, because that to me is what reflects a successful team. And if we can see that from the OC, that's a good start in terms of what the Chargers are going to be doing for the rest of the year. So I think the Kellen Moore tour is about to continue. Now, speaking of which, in the Kellen Moore tour last week, we saw a breakout from the run game, I would say. And with Austin Eckler out, it feels like it's time for Josh Kelly to step into the limelight. Now, this segment called Can Kelly Eckler? Now, if Austin Eckler is doubtful this week, I wouldn't expect the Chargers to suit him up. It just doesn't feel like something that they would do normally. If we have something like that, they normally play it a bit safe. So I'd expect Josh Kelly to get a majority of the snaps this week. And I do honestly think that's going to be a pretty impressive thing for the Chargers to witness, because finally, as we saw Joshua Kelly in the RB2 situation become resolved over the past couple of seasons, I think we really started to see a breakout from him last week with the Miami Dolphins. He put up very similar numbers to Austin Eckler, I think just under 100 yards. That to me is pretty crazy because of how much, again, the Chargers had to run like crazy, but also what you're able to replicate as a Kellen Moore on the ground, similar to maybe what you had with the Dallas Cowboys, right? And it's different running backs. We don't have Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard. We have Austin Eckler and Joshua Kelly, and they're a bit different, right? I think Joshua Kelly working to his strengths is going to mean, a specific kind of running style for the Chargers this week, especially if you're trying to go up against Tennessee Titans. I think the Chargers, in terms of backup running back, what I'm trying to get at here is that it looks good. It looks really good. And I think Joshua Kelly's going to have a fantastic week. Do I think he's going to be as good as last week? Do I think the Chargers' run game is going to be as good as last week? I think not. Again, we just talked about how Kellen Moore needs to be flexible and adapt to the opponent that he's facing this week, who is the Tennessee Titans, which is very good versus the run. But I still think that this offense is going to remain as balanced as possible, and Josh Kelly is going to get a number of carries in order to prove that. But I also do think there's two other guys on this roster that are going to get some opportunities. And by the way, fun fact, the last time the Chargers played the Tennessee Titans in 2022, Josh Kelly did log a touchdown. I think it's very possible that it happens again this week. The other two guys on the roster I think that the Chargers are going to give some opportunity to this week are going to be Isaiah Spiller, which of course I think Spiller should see some involvement, especially in the passing game. I think you're going to see him a little bit more involved in terms of the Chargers need a guy out there who can block decent, but more importantly can receive. But the other guy I think is going to get a couple of carries, and maybe if he can take off with some of these opportunities, help himself out in the future, is going to be this man, Elijah Dodson, chapter 1. Now you guys will know that Elijah Dodson, it was kind of a tough road for him to even make the roster. Now coming in week 2, obviously we want Austin Eckler back as soon as possible, but this does open up an opportunity for Elijah Dodson. If we can see a couple of carries from this man, I would say let's give this dude like 6-7 carries this game, right? If he can make the most of those carries, I think we're going to start to see a very nice role for him past the Austin Eckler era, maybe even, giving himself a chance to be a Charger of the future. But I think the chapter 1 of Elijah Dodson comes in week 2 versus the Titans, a tough team to run against. If we can see a guy like Elijah Dodson with that one cut that was so popular in the preseason, find some space, in the run game, I think it's going to help out his case for being a Charger of the future. Either way, expect to see a lot from Josh Kelly, expect to see a lot from Elijah Dodson, and I think the run game is still going to be very present here. If there's one thing that also goes very underrated from last week, it's going to be the offensive line play in the run game. Guys, I don't know about you. I went back and watched a bunch of the highlights and stuff from last week. I don't know if I've ever seen, maybe in a long time, maybe this is one of the reasons why I'm wearing this particular jersey today. I don't know if I've seen run lanes like that in a very long time. Chargers offensive line, bravo. That's a big reason for why the Chargers run game was as successful as it was. I think also bravo to Kellen Moore, who I was pretty sure had a lot to do with that point of emphasis over the offseason and the run blocking. But my goodness, if they can prove once again versus a Titans defense that's much better versus the run, that this offensive line is one of the better, if not one of the best run blocking offensive lines in the league, I think the Chargers may have just found themselves an identity going forward as that balanced team, through the pass and the run, but a very dangerous team on the run. That's going to create a lot of problems for defenses going forward. So that's something very exciting I like to think about. Now we're going to get cruising here, man. Next segment, Justin Herbert. I didn't know what to call this one. Just Justin Herbert's going to have a crazy week, man. The Titans last week on defense allowed 300 and something, or 305, I think, to Derek Carr. Now, the Chargers fans, we know Derek Carr, and I think, honestly, Derek Carr is a solid quarterback. Nothing crazy, but better than how the Raiders treated him. And I think going to that situation with the Saints is going to end up being good for him. Either way, I think Carr, he's an okay quarterback, right? But he's nowhere near the quarterback that Justin Herbert is, or, Patrick Mahomes, or Joe Burrow, or even a Tua Tagovailoa. That being said, he still put up 300 yards that week, and I think that reflects on some of the weaknesses that the Titans have in their secondary, and that is why this week's injury report was so important. They were the 300-yard team to Derek Carr, despite, having some of these guys in there. I think Amani Hooker even had an interception that week. Now these guys are gone, right? And I think a Hooker and I think Fulton might be their best two DBs. And of course, we don't want to see any of these guys hurt. It's just part of the sport, right? But it's going to carry some impact in this game. It's going to carry some impact in how efficient this defense is going to be in their pass D, right? And when you go up against, I would say, a top 5, top 3 quarterback in the league, you're going to see some differences here. You're going to see a difference in quality of play. You're going to see some difference in, how this team's going to get attacked. And I honestly think that this week, if you're Kellen Moore and you see, maybe the running attack is not going to be as efficient as it was last week, guess what? We still have Justin Herbert. I think they're going to lean on Herbert a little bit more this week. Sure, still establish the run, get the play action good to go and all that, but I think Herbert's going to be the guy this week. And that's why I think, this segment, Justin Herbert, is definitely something that's going to be warranted. If I was Kellen Moore, I would expect to see, a 300-plus yard day from Justin Herbert, maybe even 350 yards, really attack this Titans defense through the air. It's going to be very important to keep Justin Herbert upright. We just gave the offensive line a lot of praise in the run defense or in the run blocking. Can we see the same from their pass blocking? I do think so. And I think the Chargers, their plan of attack this week is going to be get in and pass the football. Pass it down their throats. We've got the weapons. We've got the time. We've got the quarterback. We've got the system now that's going to help Justin Herbert thrive. I think it's going to be a crazy good week for the Chargers offense through the air. I think it's going to be a lot of fun for the Chargers fans to watch. And ultimately, it's going to be a very important factor to this game in particular. Because obviously, the Tennessee Titans are going to have a method of offense that they're going to want to use against us. The best way to slow down King Henry kind of offense is going to be putting up points quickly. And if the Chargers can lean on their passing game to do that, then I think we're in pretty good. And I'm pretty sure Kellen is going to come out with that same kind of mindset as well. So Justin Herbert, I think we're going to see some pretty good passes from him this week and some pretty good numbers as well. Speaking of Justin Herbert and his weapons, I think the man to beat this week is going to be Keenan Allen. Okay, we talked about how good the Chargers quarterback situation is, which is much better than the Tennessee Titans quarterback situation. That's a huge plus if you're looking like, oh, director, who's going to win this game? That's probably the biggest factor right there, the Chargers quarterback factor. But the Chargers also, I would say, have a bump up in terms of weapons at wide receiver. Now, if DeAndre Hopkins does suit up, which again, I would say is like a 50-50 chance at this time, then the Titans do look pretty good as far as receiver. The problem is, I watched some of that game last week. I was in the car coming back from Vegas. I had the game on my phone. I used a VPN to make sure that we were able to get access and all that kind of stuff. And I noticed that the Tennessee Titans passing attack was pretty bad, mainly because of their quarterback play. But poor DeAndre Hopkins, man, this dude was trying to come down with passes or with catches in like double and triple coverage. I felt like Ryan Tannehill did not give a crap what was going on. He was going to toss it to number 10, and that put him in some tough situations. So that being said, DeAndre Hopkins can still suit up, and I still think the Chargers have a much better receiving core, much better offense in terms of talent outside of, let's say, running back, which still is pretty good, right? Keenan Allen's going to be the guy I think featured in this week's game with Justin Herbert. You take a look at how the Tennessee Titans were attacked last week with Derek Carr and the Saints. It was a lot of Chris Olave and it was a lot of Derek Carr. I think we're going to see the same thing from the Chargers with Justin Herbert, much better quarterback, and with Keenan Allen, better wide receiver, right? So we have a better version of that attack coming in this week versus a worse secondary because of injury to the Tennessee Titans. I'll let you guys kind of do the math there. All right. That's why I think that Justin Herbert could maybe kick the gates open a little bit early this week or this year and have one of his better performances of the season in week 2 versus the Titans. I'm thinking at minimum what I want from Herbert and this offense. You got to put up some yards. You got to put up some points. We know that Kellen more likes to run up the score, and versus a King Henry-led offense of the Titans, it's definitely not a bad idea. If I were to say the Chargers do that for any game, I think it should be this week. And I think that Justin Herbert should have a fantastic week, maybe closer to 400 yards. That would make me very, very happy. I think, last week, Keenan Allen, 6 receptions. I think, again, if you take a look at Chris Olave last week, he led in receptions that week. Kind of not a similar play style, but that's their best player to get open. Ours is obviously Keenan Allen. But Justin Herbert does like to spread the ball quite a bit, but I still think Keenan's availability makes him my favorite. And that's why I think he logs his first 100-yard game of the season, Keenan Allen. Maybe we add that touchdown on top of there, too. But I think the passing attack is going to be something to watch on Sunday. Let's talk a little bit about the defense now. The defense, this is going to be a very, very, very important aspect of this game. How do the Chargers bounce back after one of the worst defensive performances I've seen in a long time? A lot of people say, oh, it was Tyreek Hill, it was Tyreek Hill. Newsflash, Chargers have faced Tyreek Hill for a very long time. Even after he left the Kansas City Chiefs, we still had to play the Dolphins last season and again this season. Tyreek Hill has been a thorn in my side for a very long time. Okay, very, very long time. So I don't care. It was Tyreek Hill. This whole defense, Vic Fangio, was supposed to be designed to stop a Tyreek Hill kind of thing, and it still happened. And the run defense was still crappy. Okay, we couldn't get any pressure last week. Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, people were talking about, oh, these are players that are washed. They're of the past. They're not going to, they're no longer relevant because of that game. That's how bad the defense was, dudes. The defense was really, really a non-factor last week. What we see this week is going to be very important. How does Brandon Staley and the Los Angeles Chargers defense bounce back from one of the worst performances I've ever seen? It's going to be pretty important. Now, again, we're facing a different, team. We're facing a different offense, so you're going to have to plan a little bit different. Chargers historically have been really bad versus the run. Chargers are going up against a team that allowed a good number of sacks and pressure last week. I think he was pressured in something like 40% of snaps last week. That's pretty crazy if you're Ryan Tannehill. Okay, the Chargers can take advantage of that. If the Chargers watched any kind of film last week, they're going to be coming in hot and heavy in terms of, getting after the quarterback, generating pressure, et cetera, et cetera. But they're also going to have to find a way to slow down the run, and that's going to be especially difficult with their linebacker situation. So either way, my point here, yes, the Brandon Staley watch has kind of begun because of how spectacular of a loss that was last week. I'm still kind of warming up to it. I need a little bit more. I know there's a lot of Chargers fans who are like, fire him. Give me his head. That's fine. But I would need a bigger sample size before I start generating an opinion like that. But I will say he is on watch, and his ability to adapt and shake off last week is going to be put on display this week. The defense is going to be very important. Now, I think an aspect of that defense is going to be so important is going to be the pass rush. This segment called the Thule and Mac attack, not the Bosa and Mac attack, which is very interesting. Now, of course, Joey Bosa could be out, right? He's listed as questionable, I think, or doubtful or something like that. Let's actually go back and just double check and make sure. I think he was questionable. Joey Bosa is questionable for this matchup. And again, the Chargers, especially with injuries like a hamstring, they tend to veer on the side of caution, right? So I would say it's more likely than not that Joey Bosa sits out this game. And if that's the case, we're going to see a nice little sample of Thule at opposite edge of Khalil Mack this week. And if you guys watched the game last week, one of the highlights of the defense, which there weren't too many, but one of the ones that definitely pointed out to us as far as the rookies are concerned, Thule looked really good. Thule looked really solid. Rotating in with Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, he looked very, very nice, especially for his first game as a rookie. If I were the Chargers and I'm letting Joey Bosa sit out, this is the game where I'm like, okay, Thule, it's time to put up, right? It is time to put up. The Tennessee Titans, not a great offensive line when it comes to protecting their quarterback. We need to design a defense around getting to Ryan Tannehill and forcing these bad, decisions by him, which generated a couple of picks last week, right? 3 interceptions, I think. A very bad week for Ryan Tannehill. I want that version of Tannehill in my game. And the best way to get that version of Tannehill in my game for the Los Angeles Chargers is to get to the quarterback, and that is where Tuli Tuipulotu comes in. I think Tuli maybe end up being one of the better values of the Chargers in terms of picks in a long time, and I think this week could be the first week we start to really realize that. But we still have Khalil Mack opposite. I also want Khalil Mack to get in there and generate a sack, a lot of pressure, a lot of heat, just to make sure that, the narrative around his name, the respect around his name is continued and uplifted, because he still is one of the best out there. I know that it's around that time that he starts to slow down. I don't care. He's one of those exceptions to me. So the Thule and Mack attack, we got to get to Ryan Tannehill. I think that's going to be a big aspect of this game. Ryan Tannehill was so bad when pressured. If I were the Tennessee Titans, I honestly would even mix in, or maybe even start like a Malik Willis, right, this week, because the Chargers are a little bit worse versus a mobile quarterback. That's how bad Ryan Tannehill was last week. If the Chargers can capitalize on that, that's what I want to see. Next segment, we'll kind of fly through these next couple. All eyes on JC. JC Jackson did a couple of things for himself last week. He logged an interception, which is fantastic. Mr. INT coming back for the first time since 2021. Woohoo! Chargers fans, rejoice, rejoice. He also looked like dog water in several decision-making aspects of that game. In this interception, he ran it out to the 5-yard line. Chargers were able to capitalize on that opportunity because of that decision. That kind of blows. As well as a couple of penalties, et cetera, bad coverage that really aided the Dolphins to the victory they had last week. This week, however, I think if there's one thing that you can take away from JC last week is that he was there, right? He logged an interception. He was getting burned, but it was by the fastest wide receiver in the league. I think there's something to work with there. So the reason I say all eyes on JC is because can he capitalize on the things that worked last week and shake off what didn't work? I think JC, if he can bounce back again versus a wide receiver core that isn't nearly as lethal versus the speed as Miami Dolphins, I will start to think, okay, he's taking those steps to becoming some semblance of what we were hoping to get when we signed him last season. Okay? Can JC help shut down or slow down a DeAndre Hopkins if he suits up? Can JC help slow down or shut down a Treylon Burks? He should be able to shut down Treylon Burks if we see that improvement that we're hoping to see. If JC comes out of this game shutting down Treylon Burks and even logging another interception, which would be insane, I think we can start being a little bit more optimistic about number 27. Speaking of DBs, Derwin domination. We need to see a little bit better utilization of Derwin James this week. I think something that was maybe a bit more absent last week than I was hoping was the utilization of Derwin from several different positions. I need to see more Derwin, and I think we're going to see it this week, especially because of the situation at linebacker. I need to see more Derwin in the box, man. Especially now that we're going to go against a Derrick Henry this week. We're going against, a Tannehill that needs more pressure. I need to see Derwin James close to the line of scrimmage. It's something I don't think we saw a lot of last week. I think we need to see it this week. We need to see Derwin utilized as that X factor of the defense more often than not. Okay, I'm not going to spend too much time on this because you guys know who Derwin James is. You know what his utilization can be as like a jack of all trades sort of player. Very good at all these different positions. I need to see him in the box a lot this week. Titans aren't going to burn us the way that the Miami Dolphins do through the air with that speed. We can afford to put Derwin in the box a lot more often. And the reason for that, I think, is going to be, the biggest reason for that, in my opinion, is going to be the depth disaster this week. Let's go back to the injury report. Okay, we talked a little bit about it. Joey Bosa being out, that would suck, but we have Thule. It's just the depth that would worry me a little bit because Chris Rumpf would also be out. Maybe they elevate somebody. I don't know. But that is something I think is not as nearly big of an issue as the linebacker, the inside linebacker position. Eric Kendricks, great player, not as durable as you're hoping. And very early in this season, he is already out with a hamstring. Who knows how long that's going to take? I hope it's not too long. But that's a big, big problem, especially versus the run. Dan Henley, who I thought was going to start seeing some snaps as soon as this week, if he was able to bounce back from the hamstring, is also going to be out more than likely this week. Where does that leave the Chargers in terms of inside linebacker? Not a lot, dudes. Not a lot. We got Kenneth Murray, who didn't look great last week. Let's all be honest. As a matter of fact, he looked pretty bad last week. We got Amin Agbombemiga and Nick Neiman. I think those are our three guys. That's not good. That is definitely not good. That's why I think we need to see a lot more Derwin in the box this week. And that's why I think this in particular is going to be a big problem. Now, just because I think the Chargers are going to go out there and have a pretty solid game offensively and have a good game plan into attacking the Titans especially, doesn't mean I think that we're going to be smooth sailing in terms of the defense this week. I think there's things that we can do to improve this week, but my God, guys, we're about to go up against Derrick Henry. Okay, and this is something I talked to you guys about early in the season. This isn't just Derrick Henry. This is a week 2 Derrick Henry. Last time we played Derrick Henry, we're somewhere, like week 13, week 14. He was starting in Derrick. That's the way Derrick Henry works. He comes out like a crazy person in the first half of the season, maybe the first 2/3 of the season. Slows down a little bit towards the end, maybe even in the playoffs. We're getting a week 2 Derrick Henry. And this is an offense last week that got shut down pretty hard by the New Orleans Saints that abandoned the run and paid for it last week because the Saints are pretty decent versus the run. This is not the Saints. This is the Los Angeles Chargers. We are not good versus the run. They have Derrick Henry, one of the best running backs in the entire league. If I were the Tennessee Titans, no matter what this week, I'm running the ball. We are overfeeding King Henry this week. We are giving this man 20-plus carries and generating as many points as we can with that part of our offense. It just makes too much sense. And the Chargers, with their lack of help inside, with their linebacker situation, maybe with also missing Joey Bosa, who's a very underrated run defender, it's going to be tough for us to stop. I think Derrick Henry could have one of his best weeks of the season this week. And this is why I say this could be a crazy game. Because I think King Henry is going to be so good this week, it's going to put the Chargers in a tough situation in terms of it's going to be a close game. But I also think that the Tennessee Titans defense is so bad that Justin Herbert's going to have one of his best games of the season. Those two players are going to be like the highlighted guys of the week in terms of fantasy football, in terms of what you see on Sports Network or NFL Network and all that kind of stuff. I think that's going to be the narrative of this game. Derrick Henry versus Justin Herbert. And I think given the situation of both defenses, both of these players are going to have a massive week. That leads me to my last segment here. What is my prediction for this game? That all being said, I've got this game predicted Chargers 28, Titans 20. Okay? And I think I'm being pretty, conservative when it comes to the Chargers points this week. Honestly, with how that defense looks and how that defensive back unit looks right now in terms of injury, I think it could be well into the mid-30s. The only reason I have it this low is because I think the Chargers try and play a little bit of clock in the second half to try and combat a Tennessee Titans Derrick Henry. That being said, I think the Chargers, if I were to give like a backup prediction, I would say Chargers 35, Titans 23, something like that, just because I think the offense is going to explode. And I do think Kellen Moore just doesn't take his foot off the gas when it comes to putting up points. I'm going to go with that one, actually. Chargers 35, Titans 23. And I think, as a bold prediction, Quentin Johnson logs his first touchdown as a Los Angeles Charger this week. It's going to be a crazy, crazy high-flying offense for the Chargers on the through the air, and a crazy offense for the Titans on the ground. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been the Director. Leave your score predictions in the comment section below and let me know some of the biggest things that you guys are worried about in this game that the Chargers have to shut down defensively, and some of the biggest players you think are going to have a great week on the offense. Hit us up with a like and sub on your way out. If you guys did enjoy this content, this has been the Director, and as always, bolt up, stay frosty. I would also like to see maybe a big play from TCU receiver Darius Davis. Is that too much to ask for? It's going to be a good game. Tune in.